with white men in America today? Well, here's the top 10 states with the highest overdose rates and suicide deaths reported in 2023. At number 10 is Tennessee. With a population of over 6.9 million residents, they have an overdose rate of 22.2 per 100,000 residents.
I got a feeling that number's about to go up since they started those white-only communities out there in Tennessee.
65% of those overdoses were white males between the ages of 18 and 35. And out of the 1,222 suicide deaths reported, 1,051 of them were white. And number 9.
That's some interesting shit because I'm gonna keep it real with y'all, man. You know, as a black man, we face a lot of stress. Stress that we shouldn't even have to even endure. Like, it's stressful to walk in a parking lot behind some white ladies because you think they think you're gonna do them something. Because they're so afraid of us. That's stressful. Every time you encounter something like that, you're just taking a little bit of your life expectancy away just because of that stress on your body, bro. I'm keeping it real with y'all. I just recently watched a TED Talk about how racism is a part of the reason why black people's life expectancy is that much shorter than whites. Just existing as a black person is stressful.
That is Utah, where they have a total population of over 3.3 million residents. They have an overdose rate of 23.4 per 100,000 residents. 90% of those overdoses were white males. And out of 643 suicide deaths reported, 553 of them were white. And number 8 is New Mexico, where they have a total population of over 2.1 million residents. And they have an overdose rate of 25.3 per 100,000 residents. 69% of those overdoses were white males. And out of 563 suicide deaths reported, 248 of them were white males.
Out of all those guys that overdosed on drugs, I wonder how many of them have been stopped and searched and seen if they had drugs in their car. And then if that could have prevented this from happening because their life was thrown off a track by that interaction or that instance. That's crazy to me, you know, because black dudes was going to jail for having, like, you know, personal weed on them. You know, personal, meaning it was for them. They wasn't about to go and distribute this. They was going to smoke. Being locked up, thrown away with no key back in the day. It's kind of crazy. Because I know white boys do drugs. I went to school with white boys. They do way more drugs than us black dudes. Dudes smoke weed. Them boys was popping X, Molly, acid, mushrooms, all that kind of stuff. I remember it like it was yesterday. But none of them ever got in trouble for it. And if they did, they went to rehab.
And number 7 is Massachusetts, where they have a total population of over 6.9 million residents. And they have an overdose rate of 25.7 per 100,000 residents. 81% of those overdoses were white males. And out of 604 suicide deaths reported, 507 of them were white males.
Damn.
And number 6 is Pennsylvania, with a total population of over 12.9 million residents. They have an overdose rate of 26.3 per 100,000 residents. 63% of those overdoses were white males. And out of the 1,884 suicide deaths reported, 1,622 were white males. And number 5 is Rhode Island. With the total population of just 1.1 million residents, they have an overdose rate of 28.2 per 100,000 residents. 91% of those overdoses were white males.
Damn.
And out of the 117 suicide deaths reported, 98 were white. At number 4 is Ohio. With a population of over 11.7 million residents, they have an overdose rate of 29.8 per 100,000 residents. 73% of those overdoses were white males.
Wow.
And out of the 1,756
Let's play a game. What y'all think the number gonna be? What you think? 1756. 90% of that probably gonna be close to like 1. I'm gonna go with the number between 1,600 and 1,700. That's what I'm going with.
suicide deaths reported, 1,584
Oh, I was wrong.
were white. And number 3 is Kentucky.
I was close. I said 1,600. I was off by 18. That's it. I was off by 18.
With the total population of over 4.5 million residents, they have an overdose rate of 29.9 per 100,000 residents. 81% of those overdoses were white males. And out of the 816 suicide deaths reported,
All right, we're gonna play it one more time. One more time. What y'all think? Leave it in the comments. I'm gonna go with 695.
749 of them were white. And number 2 is New Hampshire. With the total population of over 1.3 million residents, they have an overdose rate of 34.3 per 100,000 residents. And 91% of those overdoses were white males. And out of the 223 suicide deaths reported, 219 of them were white. And number 1 is West Virginia. With the total population of over 1.7 million residents, they have an overdose rate of 41.5 per 100,000 residents. 94% of those overdoses are white males. And out of the 367 suicide deaths reported, 357 of them were white.
Only 10 wasn't white?
If you know somebody that's struggling with drugs and or a mental health disorder, please assist them on seeking help before it's too late.
Bro, you know what's interesting?